The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome once again, folks. I'm Chris Temple, editor and publisher of The National Investor, and we've got a returning favorite today, Niko Cacos, who is today wearing his hat as a CEO of Blue Sky Uranium. You're going to learn about that story shortly. Another Argentina-focused company that he is CEO of, Argentina Lithium. We had him on to talk about that a number of weeks back, especially after they got their major cash injection from automaker Stellantis. That was a big story for them. And of course, as I've said many a time, when it comes to battery metals, one of the things that you do to separate the stories that you want to take seriously and those that, may or may not pan out in the end is who are the car makers, who are the battery makers putting their money into. So that spoke well to Niko and his crew at Argentina Lithium. But today we're going to talk about uranium, and Blue Sky Uranium is on the Venture Exchange in Toronto under the symbol BSK. In the US, it is, make sure I look at it correctly so I don't give it to you wrong. It's on a screen anyway, BKUCF on the OTCQB. As we visit today, and this is very timely as we're recording this on the 27th, of February, Niko and his crew at Blue Sky just put out an updated preliminary economic assessment for their major project, which is uranium and vanadium, both in Argentina. We're going to get into that. And in conjunction with that and anything else, he or I may be making forward-looking statements, so we want you to be aware of that. Secondly, you see our disclosure here for National Investor Publishing. We have been compensated by Blue Sky Uranium from time to time to do follow-on media work and copywriting and things like that, of which this video is a part. So understand that Blue Sky does not pay to be recommended by me and a national investor. That is based on the company's merits, and I believe a real outlier of a story in the uranium space. And I say that, folks, because those of you who have not been like Rip Van Winkle asleep for the last at least couple of years know that of all the commodities that we can look at where we say, long term, the fundamentals are great, there's not enough supply for the insatiable and growing demands that the world has for just about everything, as far as all these minerals and metals and whatnot, uranium is the one that people are starting to get in a big way. The uranium price has gone up fivefold from its bottom about 2 or so years ago. A lot of the major equities have done great. We've got on our list, 600, 700, 800% gains with some of these things. But as has been characteristic of other metals and resources, the smaller exploration juniors so far, even with uranium for the most part, have been left behind. And one of the reasons for that is that many of them are going to wait years and perhaps decades in some cases before what may be good uranium resources are going to be developed and exploited, because at least initially, we're going to be bringing out of mothballs production that have been shuttered in the US and elsewhere for years. But there's a great big, in fact, asterisk that you need to put next to Blue Sky, because they're not going to be waiting in line to sell their uranium most likely to whoever the best bidder is in the world, because they have their own ready-made customer most likely in the country that they operate in and have that country's largest reserve in, being Argentina. So we want you to learn all about that. And so without further ado, welcome back Niko Cacos, who again today he's wearing the hat as the CEO of Blue Sky Uranium. Niko, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that great introduction. And yes, I do wear two hats, but Argentina has so many opportunities. We just want to get in. We're in there with 2 feet all in. And I think we, in all cases here, We've got really a lot going on, specifically and the track record and the history that we have in that country as a management team. We're known as a Grosso Group. Grosso Group, we've been active in that country. This marks our 31st year. We're one of the very first companies to recognize Argentina's untapped mining potential. It was only 31 years ago that the country liberalized, changed its investment laws, and for the first time to allow foreign investors to step into that country and to invest in there and to look for mining exploration and development. Prior to that, you've got the 7th largest country in the world with no mining history.
Yeah.
It didn't take you didn't take anybody exceptional thought to figure out the immense opportunity there. And we've been in there active for 31 years with a long track record of success, with 4 successful discoveries on our belt, and many more underway.
Well, as you were saying that, I had one of the slides from your presentation on the screen. We've talked about this before, you and Joe Grosso and some others. You've been there pretty much since day one with Joe, and you've had a number of successes already. And as you and I discussed several weeks back when we talked about Argentina lithium, Niko, Argentina, even though it is a relative newcomer, it's surrounded by great mining jurisdictions all over the southern part of South America, and one after the next countries start to be up and comers. Some of them have political trouble. Some of you don't know from one minute to the next what's going on. But through both Peronist and then right of center governments back and forth, it seems in that 30 years, the one thing that everybody seems to agree on down there is that the extractive industries, and again, done properly, is a big part, if not the biggest financial and economic part of that country's future. So, it's been an outlier, and people are slowly waking up, I think, to this story that Argentina has been open for business regardless of the underlying politics. So that seems to be a common denominator, luckily for you and the folks down there.
I absolutely agree. Argentina, has had its political and economic challenges, but the one common thread that we've seen over the last 3 decades is that no matter what government is in power, or whichever political stripe it may be, they all do recognize that mining has the potential to provide significant resources to that country's coffers. So they've always been supportive, and Joe Grosso, who's the visionary and who got the whole the whole mining thing here going, is now, of course, recognized as a pioneer in Argentina, as in Argentina's Mining Hall of Fame. So we have a very high profile there, but with the recent election of pro-business government of Milei, we're seeing not just support for mining, which has been steadfast, but we're also seeing improving economic conditions, reduction of red tape, making business investment that much more palatable and that much more interesting to happen in Argentina. So we're seeing a surge of interest coming into that country.
Well, I want to spend a couple of minutes on Javier Milei because, of course, he's been a major lightning rod. He's like Trump squared in South America, I think, and really on the global stage recently. But folks, before I do that, Niko and I are going to cover a fair bit of ground, but it's only a 30,000-foot view on a lot of this stuff. Do your own homework, spend some time at Blue Sky Uranium's website, get on their mailing list, follow them on social media. And additionally, for the uranium space specifically, as well as for some of the other commodity stories and story stocks that we cover, we're very shortly as we get into the springtime, going to be putting out a series of special reports that give you all the nuts and bolts, a lot more detail than we're able to cover here. And a profile on Blue Sky is going to be included in that. So if you're not already on my list, make sure you get on my list. So Niko, it's been, look, I was a garden variety Republican conservative activist for a lot of my early and to mid adult life. I was involved in a couple of different congressional campaigns, went back and forth to Washington. I long since have got the attitude, at least here in the US, of a pox on both their houses, the Republicans and Democrats alike. I'm a bit of a flamethrower sometimes, but I believe that people matter. I don't think that people need to throw their weight around in the world. The U.S. has been unfortunately too good at that. And I've been really entertained and intrigued following Javier Milei. He has a lot of the bravado and antics that President Trump has in the U.S. But it's interested me to see after he was elected, despite a lot of skepticism and that this was all talk and no, he really can't dollarize the economy. No, he really can't do this and that. He has taken that chainsaw that he loves to show off when he was campaigning to the government and to the red tape. You've got a country, I don't know if there's a country on the planet that had more people on the dole compared to those who were actually working and paying the bills than Argentina did. And that, of course, is unsustainable. So give us a quick idea of just what he has done for the business environment generally, but also to make companies like yours and others in Argentina that much more attractive than you were already.
Well, he's taken a non-traditional approach, as you stated, in terms of trying to tame this economy and tame the inflation monster that's been down there, and that's been very, very, very hard on the citizens of that country, that beautiful country, and it's been of course, very difficult for the businesses as well. I mean, late last year, inflation hit almost 200%. It's absolutely unimaginable to us up here in North America. So, but what he has done, though, he has cut spending tremendously with a lot of support from grassroots voters and citizens who recognize that it's time for a new approach to fixing Argentina's economics, because the old approach, no matter which way it went, it wasn't working. They needed a new radical approach, and I believe that Milei personifies that, in that he's cut spending tremendously, he's cutting red tape tremendously, allowing things to move forward where they couldn't move before. And interestingly, just an hour ago, I was speaking with my country manager in Argentina, and he was asking for, we need to make some adjustments for inflation, for wages. But he says, we project in the second half of this year, inflation is going to come down to single digits. So that is an incredible transformation, with to be able to achieve something that quickly. And I think a lot of the pro-business parties there have been able to recognize that this new approach is necessary, but have been shy to implement it because it was more radical. But seeing the support that he received and the broad level support, I think the pro-business parties are rallying around him and supporting him in getting the measures that he needs to get through Congress and through the parliamentary system there. And I believe that Argentina is on a path for an economic boom going forward.
That's awesome. And of course, I can't imagine anybody watching us does not wish Milei well, and more important, the people of Argentina, whose job it is to serve and hopefully to improve their lives and get off of the triple-digit inflation and all the rest of the mess that they've had. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of your project down there before we get to the PEA itself. You have a massive land position in the southern part of the country. We're going to show it here, where you have several areas where you have found what seems to be economical grades of uranium. One of the unique things about this, Niko, and before we get to this, specifics of the Havana deposit, I was interested to see that a lot of this is like some of the Asian deposits, where basically you've got uranium is carried in loose material starting at or very near the surface. There's no blasting or anything like that. In fact, a lot of the work that you've done to sample this material has not involved drill rigs as much as it has just simple excavation.
Yeah, that's right. And hand augers, we've been able to do drilling with hand augers. That's how it's incredible. It's an enormous district that we have discovered, a uranium district. It's a grassroots discovery. It spans over 140 25 kilometers in length by 50 kilometers wide. It's almost like a corridor from Vancouver, where I'm situated, all the way to Seattle. It's incredible. It's an enormous district. And we've spent a lot of time prospecting and identifying uranium occurrences throughout this entire district. And on the southernmost edge, where we spent more considerable time, that's where we made our initial deposit. We discovered called the Ivana deposit. We discovered the Ivana deposit, and then we quickly built that into a resource, did a preliminary economic assessment 5 years ago, and then just updated that now more recently. And what's incredible is here you have a huge deposit that's over 17 million pounds of uranium at the indicated resource level. So there's a lot of confidence in the resources that are there, and it starts from surface within the top 15 or 20 meters. And the report basically indicates that it's like it's like a gravel operation when it comes into mining. There's no blasting or drilling required. It's going to be very low cost. The projections at their PEA indicate it'll be under $25. When we look at peers that need $50, $60, $70 in order to produce it. So and the geology, like you stated earlier, is very similar to those deposits that we see in Kazakhstan. Now, in Kazakhstan, for some of the viewers who may not be aware, they supply half the world's uranium. And why did they do that? Sure, there's lots of it. It's low grade, just the same grade that we're getting, but it's amenable to low cost extraction. And that's exactly what we have in the Western Hemisphere here in our part of the world. So this is really a very unique project, and it couldn't be in a better country.
Yeah. So it's cheap. Yeah.
It's cheap to take out, and we get the more support from the government than what we normally expect, especially when you're dealing with uranium, because Argentina is a nuclear country. They have a long history in the nuclear business. In fact, they've been in the nuclear business almost as long as the United States has. And they have a very sophisticated and highly developed nuclear industry there. In fact, they have a subsecretary of nuclear affairs. So all the regulations and laws for permitting to put a project into production and handling the radioactive materials afterwards are already in place. They're all prescribed. So that's an enormous time saver. And in fact, Argentina currently imports all its uranium needs. And they come from Kazakhstan. And my understanding is they pay spot prices. They pay over $100 a pound. So if we can produce this under 25 and sell it to Argentina at world prices, long-term prices, which are like $80 or $90, I think Argentina's in the saving, and we are in a very good business situation.
Well, the Ivana deposit, you said it's got 17 million pounds of uranium now, which you figure according to the PEA, and I had a shot of that here on the screen. I'd encourage folks, especially if they do have some understanding of how these things work, go to Blue Sky's website, read it in detail. We don't have time to get into every nuance of it, but basically you can have a low cost operation based on the existing resource, which has got massive exploration upside. I mean, you've probably just scratched the surface as far as what you're going to be able to find and then develop down the road. But when you talked about the cost, Niko, of under $25 a pound, a couple of things noteworthy about that. First of all, as you also alluded to, the spot price recently was well over $100 a pound, was white hot. I mean, the uranium price took off for parts of last year like a scalded cat. And recently, as we're recording this, it has corrected finally to the mid 90s or so. But amid Universal, and I'll be talking about this in my upcoming uranium issue, among Universal predictions that we're going to see $150 to $200 a pound uranium in just the next couple or 3 years. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. The biggest one being that there is such a build out in the world of nuclear energy, and yet the uranium supplies just didn't keep up for a whole variety of reasons, and even now are threatened. I mean, the two biggest producers in the world, Cameco from Canada and Kazatomprom from Kazakhstan, they both had to announce in the recent past that they're going to produce less than they thought because of the supplies that they need to produce these insufficient supplies of uranium aren't there. So we're, all the way, everywhere you look, there's just not enough of the things that we need for all these building blocks. So that $25 or sub $25 cost that you have in the PEA, obviously that's a lot of room between that and the spot price, or even if you could negotiate an $80 or $90 long-term contract price for your uranium. But what's also important to understand, and in case someone might be anticipating this because you just did this updated PEA a few days ago, that $25 a pound or less figure, Niko, is after you've had to account for all of the inflation and supplies and some other things from when you did this 5 years ago. So this is the inflated number after 5 years of cost increases, and you're still looking at being one of the cheapest producers in the world.
That is correct. It is amongst the lowest cost producers in the world. So it is from a business point of view, and I don't have a degree in geology, but I do have a degree in business. I can see that this makes a lot of economic sense to, and I know math, and it makes a lot of sense to push this forward now. Our next stage is to push this forward to get to pre-feasibility study, make our production decision, and get to production as quickly as possible, because I think we're entering, like you just outlined, a real uranium bull market, because we're seeing that demand. It's an organic demand that's happening from around the world. There is, as the world electrifies and tries to pull away from carbon producing sources of energy, we're seeing these nuclear reactors being built globally. This morning, I just read, for example, that Sweden is now voting to stop their ban on nuclear fuel and nuclear reactors, because they recognize this is the best way to produce safe, secure baseload electricity, and in a cheap and an efficient manner. So nuclear is the way forward.
And that is the reason why the spot price has gone up fivefold from its bottom a couple of years ago, and why this sector has been so strong already. And it's only, in my opinion, just starting. And that is that of all of the screw ups, policy wise and otherwise, where it comes to base metals, the lack of permitting reform in countries like yours and mine, and all the rest of this stuff, the less bad or least bad story has been uranium, because everybody is on board. When you have everyone's favorite climate scold, Greta Thunberg, says, well, I think that this is part of the solution, especially when Germany doesn't want to produce nuclear power itself, but they're happy to level towns and strip mine coal underneath where towns used to be. That's Looney Tunes. And they seem to, they're about the only ones, they're about the only ones on the planet that still don't get it. So before I go on to talk a little bit more about Argentina and what your end game is going to be, for production and development one of these days, hopefully, Niko, we don't want to ignore that you've got another key metal in the mix, vanadium. Vanadium, like a lot of base metals, has had wild ups and downs in prices over the last few years. Right now, like most of them, it's on the downside, but that is also some added value for you, isn't it?
That's right. It makes up for up to almost 10% of the value of this deposit. 8 million pounds of vanadium. Vanadium is used. It's gained some recent notoriety for being a battery metal, kind of like lithium. It's a way to store energy, and these vanadium batteries tend to be very large, probably about the size of a regular house, and they can store electricity, for a long term. But the real use for vanadium is steel hardening, and that's the number one use for that. And as steel gets pumped out, we're going to see a demand for vanadium to continue. For us, the unique thing is, not only do we have a domestic potential purchaser of Argentina to buy our uranium, the same is true for vanadium, because in the province where we are active, the province of Rio Negro, they have a very bustling oil and gas industry there. And they have they manufacture pipelines, steel pipelines, and so forth. So there's a very big steel industry in Argentina, and they import all their needs again for vanadium. So again, not having to ship things across the world, it puts us on a very competitive footing to be able to become Argentina's domestic supplier, not just of uranium, but also of vanadium.
Well, that's going to be a big deal going forward. I was just a few days before we're recording this at the Mines and Money conference down in Miami, and this is a global franchise. They have conferences all over the world each year. And one of the things I pointed out on one of the panels that I ran is that benchmark mineral intelligence, which people in the industry know, they're one of the global standards when it comes to all the different moving parts of pricing of commodities the world over. They are furthering what is already being done by policymakers, especially in the EU. They're furthering a regimen where part of the cost that they are going to benchmark in the future they started with lithium, they've already done that, but they're going to go all on down the line to nickel, to cobalt, graphite, vanadium, everything else. The pricing model that they're going to come up with is going to include things like how far are you shipping things? The farther you have to ship metals, the more that you are going to be penalized on the price, because this all preceded a lot of the trade spats that have, gotten worse in recent years and stuff like that. This is to reduce shipping costs. It's to reduce the pollutants, if Argentina's got vanadium within its own four walls, why is it going to get imported from some other country? If the U.S. has got, nickel within our own four walls, which we do, but it's not being mined for the most part, why are we importing it from Indonesia? There's going to be taxes levied on that. You're going to lose carbon credits in this whole deal. So this is going to be a very big deal. And that's really what I want to wind down with, Niko, where Argentina is concerned, going back to uranium. Right now, as you said, Argentina, which has got its own fairly ambitious game plan for the years ahead to build additional reactors, additional capacity to have nuclear energy a bigger part of the national energy mix. It doesn't want to buy uranium from foreign sources. So what is the realistic process, I guess, to get from where we are right now, where they've got, they've got the need still to import it, but those aren't really long-term contracts anymore. If you can get Ivana and other resources ready, they're not married to Kazakhstan for the next 10 years. I mean, you could theoretically, in fairly short order, you could be the big supplier to the country. What's it going to take to do that?
Well, absolutely. I think the next stage here is to do a pre-feasibility study. I think that's going to take about a year to complete, and that's the point at which we make the production decision and go forward. Conceivably, in 2 or 3 years after that, we could be into construction, assuming that everything else falls into place, including financing. Now, yes, you're right. Argentina imports everything, uranium and vanadium, but there is a law, though, in Argentina that if there is a domestic supply of uranium, it must take priority over imported uranium. There's a strategic reason for that, economic reason. Well, it keeps people in Argentina employed and whatnot. So there's lots of reasons. And of course, it doesn't need to get transported all the way from Kazakhstan or from wherever the uranium comes in. We don't have to pay those shipping costs. We just pop it on a train and it goes to the nuclear reactors in Buenos Aires, just a few hundred kilometers away. So there's an economic case to be made there as well. I think, and this is just with the one, we're talking here with the Ivana deposit, the one deposit that we've been able to outline and then highlight and kind of hold up now like a little shiny apple. But we have to remember that's not the whole story for Blue Sky. Blue Sky is a huge district, and throughout this district, these districts in Kazakhstan that they were developed over the course of 50 or 70 years. Some of the deposits there are over 200 million pounds of uranium. They have the potential to be really, really huge, and we have the potential here to find multiple deposits throughout this district and really to rival some of these districts that we see in Kazakhstan. This has the potential to become a world-class uranium district that can supply not just Argentina, with its domestic issue of uranium, but to become a net exporter to other countries throughout the world. So this is really an exceptional opportunity.
Wow, that would be something else. So you've got the PFS to work on. You've got probably some financing to work on to get you there and farther toward home plate, so to speak. But it's a great point about Kazakhstan and how far along they are with similar types, as we discussed a few minutes ago, similar types of geology, similar types of ground and the physics and whatnot that you're going to need to recover uranium down the road. That would be awesome to have a Kazakhstan in South America and you guys
Indeed.
sitting on this big whack of ground. Tell us again, 140 kilometers by what?
By 50 kilometers wide. So that's like 100 miles by 30 miles wide. It's just huge. It's a huge plot of land. And we own it all 100%.
That's massive. Well, lots of blue sky with blue sky, obviously, down the road, as we see. So, Niko, hey, I appreciate the snapshot again. And folks, as I said at the outset, if you have the interest, and you should, in not only this space, but this company, and again, I can't stress enough that, Blue Sky Uranium, like a lot of the smaller uranium exploration juniors, hasn't participated in this big move we've seen with the biggest names in the early parts of this uranium boom. And the reason for that with the other ones, well, I mean, two reasons. One is that's always the way it works until the generalist investors catch on and realize that, they should be looking down the food chain, not just at the big companies, but also because with a lot of these other smaller companies, they don't have what you do. And that is a customer basically at the ready for whenever you guys are ready. And that's what distinguishes you from pretty much all of the other exploration juniors people could look at. That's why you're the only exploration junior in uranium on my list right now, because I know the story and because I'm willing to be patient and wait for these things to come to fruition. So folks, again, do your homework on Blue Sky Uranium. It's a compelling story. It's dirt cheap right now. You can do a lot worse things with your money than to be involved in something like this, where you've got all of these ingredients already in place. And importantly, where you've been able with this latest PEA, Niko, to upgrade pretty much the entire inferred resource you had before. And that's big, because that's when you start to get the attention of the people who would put up the money eventually for construction. And this is not wide-spaced holes and excavation, inferred resource. And for those that don't know these things, when you go from inferred to indicated resources, you are making one step up the scale, but you're exponentially solidifying the likely economic prospects of it, which you still need to underline with the PFS coming up. But everything is going in the right direction. And Niko, congratulations to you and to Joe and to David, Terry, and everybody else there. And we'll look forward to keeping in touch and following this story.
As do I. Thank you very much, Chris.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Take care. We'll see you soon.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.